Let me tell you why you're here.
I've seen things.
Oh my god.
Whoa, yeah! You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Guaranteed to jack you up.
Yo, what is going on, my dudes? It's your host, LamarStaysWeird, coming to you out of sight, out of mind once again. Now, it is 2024, and I'm super excited. I got a slate of movies that I'm ready to cover this year, so it's going to be awesome. I'm going to be covering quite a few anniversary movies. They're going to be turning 20, 25, 50. You know, I got a few on the list. This is going to be the first one of the year because I just noticed my nephew was born on January 2nd. I'm recording this on the 3rd. He was born on National Science Fiction Day, and that got me thinking, what sci-fi movies do I love? And I was tweeting about it. I was tweeting a list of gifts and a list of movies I really love, and I came across one that I haven't seen in a little while. I watch it every now and then because it gives me inspiration for some of the comics and stories I'm writing, and I love this movie. I think it's a very well done movie. It's great. It was made 11 years ago, and I think it doesn't get enough credit that it deserves. And the movie we're going to be talking about today is called Chronicle, starring Dane DeHaan, Michael B. Jordan, and Alex Russell. Now, some of you guys may be familiar with some of those actors. You know, you got Dane DeHaan. I know him from Valerian, The Cure for Wellness, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. He played Green Goblin, which I was so ready because he did amazing in this movie. I thought he would be incredible as the Green Goblin and as Harry Osborn, but I personally don't blame it on him. I think his performance was fine. It was good. It's what I expected. It's just the writing and the direction that they went in with those movies. It's not great. A lot of people shit on Spider-Man 2. I kind of really like Spider-Man 2 more than 1. I think it's more enjoyable. I don't know why. It's really fun to watch. That's just me. And the soundtrack is amazing. Okay. Hans Zimmer knows what the fuck he's doing. Any movie he's scoring, there's a good chance I'm probably going to listen to that score. But he's from there. And then this was the first movie I got introduced to Michael B. Jordan, which a lot of people know as Killmonger. Very famous for playing Killmonger in the Black Panther. And he's also Adonis Creed with the Creed movies. I haven't seen them, but I heard they're really good. And I know he's directing the 4th one, or directed the 4th one. I can't remember. I don't keep up with those movies. I'm not a big sports movie kind of guy. But I keep hearing great things, and I love him as an actor, and he is one of the handsomest dudes I've ever seen in my life. Holy shit. He is incredibly charming. I'm thinking of so many things I want to say to compliment him, but I feel like none of those are going to be okay, so I'm just not going to say it. But just know, I think he's a very, very handsome and charming dude. And in this movie, a very young Michael B. Jordan does not shy away of sprinkling some charm on you, okay? Because he is I think he is a highlight of this movie. Him and Dane DeHaan steal the show in this movie. I love Dane DeHaan as, okay, spoiler, I love Dane DeHaan as the villain in this movie, but Michael B. Jordan, man, he kills it. He does an incredible job at being a friend, being a hero. He's a stand-up guy. He's what every guy should aspire to be. That is a man, okay? Now, this type of movie can be kind of off-putting for some people because it is found footage. I do know it can make people dizzy or they just don't like that style. But this came out in the 2010s when that was peak, where every movie wanted to be that. Now, some of my favorites from that era is going to be like End of Watch, a very gruesome and great police film with Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena. Quarantine, which was pretty much a shot-for-shot remake of the Mexican movie Wreck. District 9, which is definitely going to be a movie I cover. I love District 9. Cloverfield, and believe it or not, I walked out of Cloverfield the very first time I went to go watch it in theaters with my dad. We could not handle all the jankiness, everything going on. My dad and I were like, what the fuck is this? How do people call this a movie? And it wasn't until years later where I revisited it, and I was like, I was wrong. This is a good movie, and it's still a good movie to this day. Another one from the 2010 handheld era, Project X. That is a very fun one. I love that movie. That was everybody when they were a teenager, especially around that time. I was a teenager around then. I can't remember how old I was exactly when it came out. but everyone wanted a party like that. And I used to party back in the day, but everyone wanted a party like that. And then another set of movies that people were just obsessed with around that time was the VHS series. Around that time, it was only 1 and 2. I know there's probably 2 or 3 more now, but 1 and 2 were so good. And man, the stories in those movies were fucking wild. I might cover them one day because there's some good stuff in there, man. There really is some pretty good horror stuff in there. I'm glad we don't really do those types of movies anymore because, man, it's just kind of hard to get into it sometimes. But I know nowadays it's definitely evolved into the sense where now they're streaming. There's people doing like Twitch or TikTok. People are doing this everywhere. So now I think they're even more relatable than ever. And it is kind of concerning that that's actually a thing, but hey, times are changing. Everyone has a camera on them. I mean, this is what I'm doing. Everybody has a fucking podcast now. I have a fucking podcast and I'm nobody, man. I'm just a dude that likes nerdy shit and is like, you know what? I have the stuff. I used to stream. I used to make videos, like gaming videos. Why don't I just do a podcast and talk about movies I like? Everyone's doing something creative. Everyone wants to show off something. It's just how it is. It's how our world and our culture is just going forward in time. All right, so now a little bit about this movie. So this movie is about these 3 teenagers who come across this mysterious artifact and they interact with it, and all of a sudden they start to develop these powers. Now, I love how this movie handles it because they don't just start off, they're able to like use the force and they could just chuck things and all this other stuff. No, they slowly develop and get stronger with these abilities and they become closer. These were people that weren't very close to begin with, but because they're bonded by this one experience and they're all going through this, much like puberty. I think it's kind of a bit of an allegory for puberty itself and just trying to navigate, you know, your feelings and everything going on around you. Like everything seems so much bigger when you're a teenager, like the smallest inconveniences. And then you always have those older people telling you, hey, it's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. Like when you get older, you'll understand. And I know everyone hated hearing that. And I did too. But now that I'm older and I'm in my late 20s, man, do I understand where they're coming from because I've had people way younger than me, like through jobs I've met, and they're talking about their stuff. And I'm just like, oh, just slow it down. Please don't stress out. It's not a big deal. Enjoy the time. But I'm also not trying to undermine anybody's feelings by saying, hey, what you're going through is nothing. Like, no, I'm not trying to be like that. But it's in the sense like, it's not the end of the world, you know. But for these guys, they're going through all of that together. I mean, they have powers. So their bond is strengthening. But when challenges and turmoil just start to arise, things get muddled, you know, relationships get tested, and it's just how it is. And it turns out into this major destructive downward spiral. And I'm pretty sure we've all been through that multiple times in our lives. I definitely have. I want to assume that's normal because I hope it is, to where I feel less alone in that. Incredible movie, incredible performances, man. Everyone does such a great job. You really believe these guys are teenagers and their bond is amazing. They act like any teenager would act if they got powers, if they got telekinetic powers. You see them pulling pranks. The stupid conversations that they have is great. I swear I could almost like verbatim pinpoint some of these conversations that they have that I've had before with my friends, talking about the dumbest things, making the dumbest jokes that don't even make sense. Like now it's more so you laugh at it because like, oh man, that's so dumb. I used to be like that. That's why it gets a bit of a laugh. It's because, oh, I was in that weird, awkward phase right there, or whatever, of trying to be funny or be cool or edgy. Like that's what that was. So bravo to the writers on this. And believe it or not, one of the writers wrote Netflix's Bright, the one with Will Smith. It is about like the wizards and stuff. A lot of people don't like it. I liked it. I thought it was fun. Of course, you could poke holes into the world, but I mean, hey, not everybody could write something that's, you know, fully bulletproof and like there's no loose ends or anything. No, but it's a great movie. I thought it was very well done. It looks great, shot great. Like it's cool, you know? Like fuck what anybody else says. I like what I like. But this movie also handles some serious topics very well. I think it depicts things perfectly. It's almost like these guys probably went through the same thing, or they got to see a lot of these things up close and personal. We'll dive into a bit more when I'm going to get into the spoiler territory, but I highly recommend it. Every now and then it pops up on streaming services. I bought it today just because I wanted to watch it and it wasn't on anything, so it was only like $5. So bought it, watched it. It's a short movie. I think it's like hour and a half, hour 23 minutes, somewhere around there. Short movie, great. Like from beginning to end, you're already hooked. You care about the characters. You're intrigued in what they're going through and their relationships. And kind of you want to be friends with these guys, or mainly Michael B. Jordan. I mean, what would I befriend Dane DeHaan's character? Yeah, because the guy needs a friend. You know, he needs help. He's going through stuff outside of the circle that the other guys don't know about. So it's a really accurate depiction that you can be friends with somebody. You have no idea what they're going through. You're all having the time of your lives. But the moment you guys completely leave, he's having the worst day of his life or whatever. It sucks, man. I'm going to go into it. It's spoilery, but yeah, I'll go into it in a minute. It was made on a budget of $15 million and it made over 126 million in the box office. So it did phenomenal. It did great, but it's just not a lot of people talk about it, which kind of sucks. But it was great. I don't want it to have sequels or anything. I'm fine. I love what happened. It's a great one-off movie that was definitely inspired by different comics, superhero movies. There was a lot of that inspiration, and you could tell. And it's so funny. This movie came out first, and then Dane DeHaan goes on to be in Spider-Man 2, and Michael B. Jordan goes on to play the Human Torch, Johnny Storm, in Fantastic Four, which was also directed by Josh Trank, who directed this movie. I did not watch that movie because a lot of people just did not like the movie. And I know everybody can form their own opinions. You should form your own opinions and go watch movies yourselves. But I am a comic book person, and everything I heard about this movie, I was not digging, and I was just like, no, I'm not going to watch it. Love the cast. Cast is great. I just think it's definitely the story. Once again, victim of the story, everything started to fall apart. But thankfully, that wasn't the case with this movie because Josh Trank knew exactly what he was doing. He made all three of our lead actors live in a house and develop a bond. So that's why it's so genuine. And they were all pretty young at the time. So three dudes just in a house, bonding together, shooting the shit for a couple days, couple weeks. I think it was like maybe 2 weeks or so. And yeah, it shows. I think they genuinely became good friends, or they're incredible enough actors where they genuinely seem like they love and care about each other and have such a great time with each other. But now we're going to get into the spoilery section of it. So I'm going to be talking about the movie a little bit more, going into some further details and stuff. But now I want to talk about Chronicle's relationships with the three guys, since I was just talking about that. All three of these guys have such a great bond. Seeing them have so much fun together when before you didn't really see them ever hanging out. Yeah, you got Matt and Andrew who are there. They are cousins, but they talk about in the movie how they weren't close and Matt didn't really like Andrew. And that's fine. Sometimes you just don't really like your family or know your family like that. You're not going to be friends with everyone, you know, but you can be cordial. And that's what he was. But after they got their powers, they start to hang out and they definitely bond. And they're able to have inside jokes. They're hanging out with Steve, who was the popular guy running for like school president and all that stuff, running for class president and all that. And he's hanging out with these guys who Andrew was pretty much the loner by himself. So these three guys from different sections of this are hanging out. They get their powers. They're able to pull pranks and they're having sleepovers. And then they talk about sex and they show that they care about each other's personal problems whenever it starts to really show from one person to another. And the bickering and fighting, the little back and forths, it's always nice too, because that's what everybody does with their friends nowadays. And it's so genuine. And I think their relationship is even more relatable nowadays because this is exactly what teenagers would do if they had powers. They would film themselves pulling pranks, messing with little girls and teddy bears, putting stuff in people's baskets. You already see this type of stuff and people don't have powers because of TikTok, because of Instagram, YouTube, all of this. Everybody's doing clips, making things go viral. They're recording these things for themselves. So imagine nowadays, people, if somebody had powers, they're going to show them off. But everyone's going to call it fake. They're just going to be like, oh, it was editing and all this other stuff. So it happens. And I love that that's a thing. It's so funny This movie is over 10 years old, and it's so relatable nowadays of how these people would act if they did have powers. And speaking of the powers from Chronicle, I love that it starts small. It's very minimal, okay? And they even say themselves, it's like a muscle. Because the more they use their powers, they start to have nosebleeds, so they really can't push too hard, or they're just going to deal damage to themselves. Most likely the brain, because it's telekinesis, so it's going to fuck with your cerebro a little bit. So over time, they have to do small things, little by little, like messing with Legos, messing with a ball. They do all these things, and eventually they work their way up to moving cars, creating little like force fields over their hands, so that way they can't be punctured by anything. And then even to the point of flying. So they get to do these things. They have to work it out like a muscle. They really have to try. And you start to see character development in that of itself, because Matt doesn't really do a whole lot. He doesn't imagine himself doing much with his gifts. He just has them and it's like, it's kind of fun, it's whatever. And then you got Andrew, who he thinks about doing more, and he wants to get stronger, which is not a bad thing. But you see where he comes from, and you can see how, like, oh, that could go down a dark path. But then you also have Steve, who wants to do great things. I mean, yeah, he does some jokes, and he uses it during sexy time. But I mean, hey, he's technically helping somebody out, but he wants to be a hero. He wants to do more. And you start to see him progress a bit more than everyone else. He's the first one to fly, which is a big feat, because they couldn't really do it at first, but it inspires Andrew to start expanding. I don't think any of them really knew the extent that they could go with their powers. And because of him, yeah, they did it. He's a very inspirational man in this movie, and you can really tell. And it's a shame what happens later in the movie. But speaking of Michael B. Jordan's character in Chronicle, Steve Montgomery, he is such a genuine person. You can really tell this is a great guy. From the moment he first comes across Andrew, he cares about what's happened to him. He tries to ask him for a favor. He was looking for him specifically, and he comes across him, finds him, and then he sees that he's crying, and he's asking him, like, wait, what's going on? Like, he automatically puts aside, even while drunk, whatever he wanted to get done, because you get glimpses of him before by seeing the pictures, and your mind automatically goes to, oh, movie-wise, what are the movie rules? Oh, he's a very popular class president type of guy. He's going to be a douche. Like, that's just what he's going to be. He's probably going to bully Andrew a little bit here and there. Not at all. Not at all. He probably gives more of a shit about Andrew than anyone else in this movie, even his own parents. And he's so concerned about him. So he asks him what's going on. He invites him into the situation about finding the little meteorite or whatever it is that gave them the powers. And after that, they've shared a few moments alone of him showing great concern of what Andrew is going through. He tries to help him be more social. He tries to help him get girls. He really tries to help him go through his problems. He tries to slowly dig into what's going on in his personal life, but he doesn't try to overstep the boundary. But he reassures him that he's there and that he can be capable of great things. And he's just a great friend in this movie. He's charming. He's funny. He's very well liked. And this is the type of friend that anybody would want in real life. I definitely would. I want a Michael B. Jordan in my life, okay? And I have this theory, if he didn't die in the movie the way he did, I think he could have drastically changed the outcome of the movie, because he was the most advanced one so far. So he was doing training outside of all of that. And I think he was definitely the polar opposite of Andrew, and very capable of either stopping him or deterring him from causing any damage or going down the dark path that he does. If he didn't die the way he did, honestly, I think both of them could have made it out alive, and who knows? They could have became heroes. But now we get to move on from that, and we're going to talk about Andrew. So Andrew is the main person we're focused on in this film. A lot of things are told from his perspective, but it does eventually shift later down the way once we see that these two characters, Matt and Andrew, they're swapping positions. Matt's not a villain by any means or anything, but they do start to swap, and everything starts to be a little bit more from Matt's perspective about halfway through the movie, entering the third act. Now, in the beginning, Andrew was getting bullied a lot, and then he was also being physically abused at home, which is very fucked up. He has a dad that gives no shits about him whatsoever. And then he has the worst case scenario imaginable. He doesn't have friends. His cousin doesn't even really like him, but his cousin helps him out with rides to school. His father fucking hates him and beats on him. And then his mother is slowly dying because she's sick. And then they have financial problems on top of that because they're trying to come up with everything. His dad's not working anymore. He just collects checks from the government because he used to be a firefighter. So there's the daily stress right there. All of that, so much already. And he doesn't even have powers or anything on top of that that could also alter his perspective. And it's a real shame that you can see this type of behavior developing in Andrew because he seems like a nice, quiet kid, but it's obviously the environment, the whole nature versus nurture thing. So in Chronicle, the nurturing part is not there. He's the only person that's really nice to him from the get-go is definitely his mom and Michael B. Jordan's character. Matt's pretty nice, but like to an extent, but these people definitely go the extra mile to really check on him and want him to really be happy. But once he gets these powers, he does get this bit of self-confidence. And I believe that is also the allegory of like puberty. You know, you start to, like your mind starts to change going through puberty, like going from a kid to like to a teen. It's a very different mindset. So the world is a little bit bigger and you think you have an understanding and you think you know it all. And that's what starts to happen. He starts to have these powers. He wants to be good. He does want to be a good person. He doesn't want to hurt people or anything, but he's also super tired of getting hurt and mistreated all the time. There's this one scene where his dad starts to wail on him in the basement, and even just his dad yelling at him and definitely changing from like just an argument to I'm about to fight you, he gets like he shuts down. Like his arms are like by his sides. Like even with these powers, his first thought isn't to, oh yeah, let me just like you know, lift you up to the wall or to the ceiling or anything like that. None of that. Instead, he gets shoved to the ground. He gets beaten. He gets hands thrown on him, but he doesn't use his powers until he really feels the need to defend himself. And then he just grabs his dad and like shoves him against the wall and like hoists him up. His dad's like floating off the ground. And then that's when he's screaming at him like, "Oh, I could crush you. Like you have no idea," and all this stuff. Like he just keeps saying like, "I could crush you," and then like just throws his dad across the room. And then he leaves. He leaves after that, after knowing what he just did and the power he just displayed. And so that's where that cycle starts to go in. He finally dishes out all the stuff that gets dished on him. And not saying that it feels good, but it's like a bit of a relief. Like, man, I finally get to do something. Like all these bad feelings I have, I get to let it out a little bit. And as somebody who got bullied a lot in school, I have bullied people and it's a terrible cycle and I feel terrible about anything that I've done. It was really bad, you know. I got bullied by the jocks. I just got bullied by people in general and it really sucks. And having all those feelings and you want to dish it out on somebody, and I hate the things that I used to do to people, and it's like if I could find these people again, I would totally apologize. Because being older and realizing how terrible that is and how I've probably drastically changed somebody's life in some way because of the things I used to say or do, it's really terrible. But unfortunately, I don't have any communication with any of those people anymore. I have no idea where they are in life, but I hope that they're happy and I hope that they're far better now. And I hope that they're progressing and prospering in their life. So please be wary of the things that you say and do to other people, because it sucks, man. We're all going through some shit. It really does suck. So let's not try to make it any worse. But once he gets that wailing, that's where Steve comes in again to try to save him. And this is, I think, definitely one of the sadder parts in this movie is Andrew tries to go off and be alone. He flies off to be by himself. Steve knows something is wrong, so he goes out of his way to go find him, and he somehow finds him. So he's chilling up in the sky, and there's a storm going on. So he finds him, he's trying to talk him down, like, hey, you don't need to be out here. But obviously Andrew is still very mad. He still has like, he still has the black eye or bloody nose. You know, he's obviously roughed up. And Steve, he can put together the things that are going on because he's never outright told, oh yeah, he's being abused. He just catches on by some of the previous conversations where Steve was genuinely asking about his life while they were hanging out on top of a building one day. He's asking like, oh, you know, like, what did your dad do and all this other stuff. And then Andrew tells him, oh yeah, you know, he's home now. He just collects checks, you know, disability and all that. But he does drink a lot. And the way that he delivers that line, Steve kind of like looks at him. And I think that's where he gets it like, okay, like he does a lot of drinking. All right. And so during that conversation that they're having in the sky, Andrew is getting very agitated because he just wants to be left alone. But Steve is really trying to reach out to him and comfort him and let him know that they're there. But Andrew's not taking it. He's believing what his dad says, that they're not his friends or anything, that they're just lying to him. They're only messing with them. Like he's a joke. And what really pisses off Andrew is whenever Steve actually says, like, oh, it's your dad. Your dad beat the shit out of you again. Like, he doesn't need to be doing that. Like, you don't deserve that. And that he still keeps pestering. And then that's when Andrew starts to really turn on him and say, you're not my friend and all this other stuff. And then while he's getting more and more agitated, the lightning strikes around him are going off more and more. And Steve is just trying to understand where's all this hostility towards him is coming from, because they've been spending so much time together, like weeks together, like day after day after day. And unfortunately, he just gets struck by lightning and falls out of the sky. And the next time that we have a cut in the movie, it's at his funeral. And it's Andrew still filming, and it pans around and you see Matt. Matt's just staring at him because he doesn't he knows something happened because he doesn't get it. And he even approaches him after the funeral in a very intense conversation. He's pointing out that things don't add up, that only them two would know because they are arguing about it in public. So he's being a little cautious about what he's saying. He's asking him questions like, oh, why was Steve struck by lightning, but there was no recorded lightning strikes? And why was he in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere? Like, how did they find him? Like, something happened. And all Andrew could say is, I don't know. And he deeply regrets what happens. He talks about it. He's able to have alone time with his grave, and he apologizes profusely that he wasn't trying to kill him, that it was just an accident, that he just let his emotions get the best of him, and what happened happened, which ultimately is something that happens a lot, and it's unfortunate. That's why we always have to keep ourselves in check, to like learn to walk away and try to do better for ourselves and for the people around us, which unfortunately it always falls on the people that we love because they're the closest people we have. So whenever they try, they're in ground zero, man. They're going to be the closest ones in proximity that is going to take the heat, and it's so unfortunate. And this point on, the camera work in this movie is great. I really like the camera work in this movie because they go full out found footage. They don't have any moments where it's fully cinematic, where obviously it's a Hollywood camera there. Everything is practical. Everything is in-world continuity. You have security cameras, you got handheld cameras, phones, you got all these different things taking these different points of view. And even the music, this movie doesn't have an original score either. There's nothing. It's all radio music. And thing is, you only hear it when it's at a party coming from a sound system, the car stereo system, or I mean, for the times, probably iPods, which they were a thing. And even I still have mine. Even a Zune. I still have a Zune. I still have a scarlet red Zune that I haven't opened, and even has a sticker on it that was on sale for like 20 bucks. And it probably doesn't hold that very many songs at all compared to nowadays, but it's so cool. That little detail, all the music comes from original sources, and the same thing with the camera work. So really great attention to detail. They knew exactly what they were doing in this movie. But after Andrew has that fight with his dad, you do not see him on camera, like facial. He's shown from the back, or just not in the camera at all, but from his point of view. So it's a very villainous tone that's being handled right here. But the next time that we do see him is after he's done something very malicious. So he finally approaches his bully again after they try to start with them, and he just uses the power and yanks his teeth out. And then he's in a bathroom stall recording himself talking about how he did it, because now he's trying to kind of show off how his powers are working, and how in his mind how he pictures it for it to work, which is a very cool understanding. I like how they do this, because he talks about how some of the teeth he ripped out clean, and then some of them kind of jagged, they broke. But he describes it as he was imagining like a lasso going around the individual teeth and just yanking it. And the whole time he's holding him and playing with them, his hands have blood, and he does not look phased whatsoever. So it's very much like, okay, he's gone off the deep end. Like, he does not care. He just messed up this one guy. So this is where he starts to definitely use his powers in an offensive way. Before, it was just using him for fun, and then defensive, and then he starts to use him in a very aggressive manner, and then deadly towards the end. And I don't mean to be this guy, but his character definitely develops into this sort of incel character. I know a lot of people don't like that word, but kind of, yeah. the downfall of everything starts after this talent show where he's riding this high. Like he shows off a bit of his powers and he gets really popular because Steve is also helping him out as well. And so they go to this after party. He's like the main man. Everyone's like cheering for him. They want to meet him. They want to say what's up. But a girl finally wants to talk to him and want to, so it's like that. So he's getting that type of popularity, but he gets too drunk. He throws up on the girl, and then the whole embarrassment starts to set in, and he's getting made fun of at school again because it's an embarrassing moment. Like, yeah, people are going to talk about it. Things spread around high school, people talk. So he's a guy that's never slept with a woman, that didn't get any girls. And now because of this, he's not really going to get any girls. And then he starts to see himself as better than everyone, that he's an alpha. Or in this movie, he says apex predator, which is true because it's the natural course of nature. They technically go up in the food chain because of their powers. And through natural order, one of them is going to be like the stronger one. There will be an alpha. That is just nature taking its course. We're all animals. It's the natural order of things. There's a hierarchy. And so he believes himself to be that. So he starts to act out in that way and use those powers as an extension of his newfound purpose and confidence. So it's kind of weird seeing him as an incel, but it's kind of what it is by today's standards. But the world evolves, and yeah, so I don't know if it would come off as cringy or anything to anybody, because people could just see, oh, it's an incel type of deal. I mean, I can roll my eyes at that here and there, but I feel like it's only if something comes out nowadays. But I excuse it then because I did watch this back then, so I didn't grow up thinking, oh yeah, this guy's an incel. But, I digress. It's a great movie, great characters, great performance. I still say give it a shot. But now one of the last things I want to talk about, and this is also going to lead into something else, is the third act. The third act fight between Matt and Andrew. I love it. So Andrew tries to steal money from a convenience store because he's trying to get medicine for his mom. So now the financial burdens are starting to weigh on him as well. And while doing so, a clerk tries to shoot him, and then he uses his powers to swipe the gun away, and it shoots one of the gas tanks and explodes the gas station. He gets covered in fire, but he's wearing his dad's firefighter uniform, so he's mostly protected, but he does, get blasted. And we got to remember, they're not invincible. They're still humans that just have these powers. And he wasn't fully prepared to take that. So I don't think he fully protected himself by any means from the blast. So he ends up in the hospital. He's covered in all these bandages and a hospital gown. And I think it's very reminiscent of Akira. I mean, how can it not be? Okay, he's very much like Tetsuo coming out of the hospital and using his powers to like destroy people, and the whole battle just destroying the city and stuff, very much in tune with Tetsuo versus Canada. And it's about the same thing. It's about two friends. I mean, they're cousins, but it's two friends. This one develops powers and starts to let it go to his head, and this ego where he doesn't want to be at the bottom anymore. He doesn't want to be the butt of a joke or bullied. So he uses that to display himself as a source of power. And ultimately, it's up to the friend to realize, I have to be the one to stop him. Like, I got to do something about this. And he does put an end to it, which is very much like Akira. So I think there's definitely some inspiration there, and very well done. The fight is great, and it gets very emotional towards the end. Akira is always going to be inspiring to sci-fi. It is one of the best sci-fi movies ever. And I'm going to be covering it on the podcast soon. I don't know when, but it's definitely a movie that I'm going to cover. And I'm slowly making my way to collect all of the issues from the 80s comics run. I have like 1 through 33, and there's 38. And it's getting a little harder to find the other ones because they're getting more expensive. So I got to try my best, but I will eventually get those, and I will cover the Akira movie because it's definitely one of my favorite sci-fi movies ever. And I'm not huge into anime, but man, I love Akira. I think it is a great start. I know it's probably cheesy and stereotypical for people to say, but it is on that pedestal for a reason. But the grand battle really starts at the Seattle Space Needle. And because of this movie, I kind of got really interested in the Space Needle, and it's something I really want to visit because I just thought it was cool, like a really cool POI. So now I would really love to go one day and check it out. I think it looks awesome. And I would probably geek out about it a little bit because, like, oh yeah, this is where like the big battle happened. Andrew probably dies over there by that statue. Spoiler alert. And the end of this fight gets very sad because Matt's trying to protect him no matter what, no matter the fact that he tried to kill his dad and all these different cops and even try to kill him and his girlfriend. He's still trying to be there for him, telling him like, hey, we can fly away. We can get away from all this. Like we can go where you wanted to go. We can go to the mountains. We can see the monks. You know, we can become enlightened. We can get away from all this bullshit. Leave it all behind. Just us two. And unfortunately, he's just not taking any of it. At some of the last moments, Andrew is just like clenching his hands and just screaming. And the skyscrapers around him are just like breaking windows and like starting to like shake and like crumble. So obviously he's really trying to bring it down. And Matt is just begging him to stop. And he just keeps calling his name and he's crying because he knows what he has to do. And at the last moment, he realizes there's this statue with a spear and he doesn't want to do it. So he keeps begging him to stop, but he uses the power to grab the spear and just chucks it straight through his back and piercing him to the ground. And it's super sad because it's obviously something he didn't want to do. Even though they had their differences, it wasn't enough to make him not love or care about him anymore. And a lot of times we got to remember that, to always be there for each other. No matter what little differences we may have, it doesn't mean we don't love the other person. We're not meant to agree on everything. We can agree to disagree, and that's just how it is. Nobody is the same person, and we don't need echo chambers. It's good to surround yourself with people with different mindsets because they help you grow. They challenge you to think differently and adapt to these new ways or other people's ways of life. And that had a real impact on Matt, and he decided he wants to do good things with his powers. And he carried out Andrew's final wish, was to go to the mountains to see the monks. He grabbed his camera, sat it there, and was like, Andrew, you made it, and I love you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. So be sure to tell your people that you love them, man, because anything could happen. Small differences, put it aside, man. The drama and shit can go away, but the good times are there. The bond is there. You just got to work through it. That's all you got to do. And I think this is a great movie to watch. Like I said, it's short, it's fun, great characters, a good ending. It's great all the way through. Incredible sci-fi movie. If you guys really like sci-fi, which I would hope you do if you're kind of following me, since sci-fi and horror is mainly going to be the top two things I talk about on this. And now that's going to wrap it up for this podcast. But before I go, I am going to give you your cookie's fortune. And here we go. Happiness is not something ready-made. It is made from our actions. Do with that what you will, ladies and gentlemen. But until next time, be excellent, be kind, subscribe to the podcast.